just 10 years old, this American boy made a promise that would change his entire life. He told his classmates, "One day, I'm going to become an FBI agent." And the classroom erupted in laughter. But while everyone laughed, he simply stared forward. Something inside him told him not to give up. That afternoon, he walked home carrying a dream that seemed much bigger than his small town. At home, he watched stories about investigators and became fascinated by the people who protected others. He even opened a notebook and wrote the words he never wanted to forget. Future agent. But his family didn't have much money. His parents worked hard just to provide the basics. He could see the stress on his mother's face as she counted the family's money and paid the bills. So while other kids were sleeping, he stayed up late studying. He knew his dream would require sacrifice. And before sunrise, he was already running. Day after day, he trained himself to become stronger. Every push-up hurt, every mile was exhausting. But quitting hurt even more. He spent countless hours studying criminal justice, history, and everything he believed could bring him closer to his goal. Some classmates still mocked him. But this time, he didn't argue. He simply kept walking. His bedroom slowly became a reminder of his dream, a place filled with goals, notes, and motivation. Years later, he stood at his college graduation. His parents watched proudly from the crowd. He began building real-world experience, learning how to serve and protect people. Then came the moment he'd been waiting for. He finally submitted his application to the FBI. And then, nothing. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Until one afternoon, a single envelope appeared in his mailbox. His hands trembled as he opened it. This letter could decide the future he'd spent years building. But the news wasn't what he wanted. He had been rejected. That night, he sat alone in his room, staring at the letter and questioning everything. For the first time, tears replaced determination. Then he remembered something from his childhood. His father's voice telling him never to let failure decide his future. He looked at the rejection letter again, and instead of throwing it away, he folded it carefully. The next morning, he was running again, this time through the rain. At night, he studied again. He identified his weaknesses and started fixing them one by one. He trained his body, sharpened his mind, and prepared harder than ever before. Eventually, he submitted another application, and this time, when he pressed submit, there was no fear in his eyes. The waiting began again. He continued working while quietly hoping for the phone call. Then one day, his phone started ringing. He stared at the screen. For a few seconds, he didn't know whether he should answer. Then he picked it up. As he listened, his expression completely changed. He had to tell his parents. And when they heard the news, the family embraced in tears. His childhood dream had finally brought him to a federal law enforcement training academy. But getting accepted was only the beginning. The physical training pushed him to his limits. The academic training was just as demanding. Every mistake could teach him something, or set him back. At the end of exhausting days, he was tired enough to quit. But when others walked away, he kept training. He remembered the 10-year-old boy who had made that promise. During the final tests, exhaustion took over his body, but his determination was stronger. Then, finally, graduation day arrived. He stood among his fellow graduates, holding the credentials he'd worked years to earn. And somewhere in the audience, his parents watched with tears in their eyes. The boy who once seemed to have an impossible dream had finally reached the finish line. Then he noticed someone unexpected in the crowd. It was his old teacher, the same person who had once told him to dream smaller. For a moment, he remembered that little boy standing in the classroom while everyone laughed. Now he was walking into his professional career, no longer chasing the dream, but living it. The badge on his suit represented more than a job. It represented years of sacrifice. And perhaps the most meaningful part was being able to inspire children, who were now standing where he once stood. He walked through the halls of his new workplace, knowing exactly how far he'd come. Later, he stood by a window overlooking the city and thought about the journey. Every struggle seemed to flash through his mind: the laughter, the studying, the rejection, the training, and finally, the success. Then he remembered the old notebook he'd kept since childhood. He began sharing his experience with young students, telling them that their background doesn't have to determine their future. And when one shy child looked up at him with a big dream, he recognized something familiar. The American flag waved in the sunset as he walked forward, carrying everything he'd learned. He had spent years chasing one dream, but the real victory wasn't the title or the badge. It was proving that failure doesn't have to be the end of your story. Because sometimes, the only difference between an impossible dream and a real one is refusing to give up.